I agree with the general tenor of everything that Geoffrey Robertson said. I'm a great admirer of Geoffrey Robertson. We need more Geoffrey Robertsons in the system. But it was a gross injustice to, just to go through the motions of a period of time that it would be impossible for them to do anything in that. It compounds the supercilious way that the prosecution dealt with the whole exercise. It was very much a court-martial sort of flavour, wheel in the guilty bastard from the captain's table that I'm sure you're familiar with, that I'm familiar with. Happily, those days have gone, but it was that sort of general flavour of the administration of military law that I think poisoned the whole climate of the trials of these three men, and then their later attempts to get later attempts made on their behalf to have the intervention of a proper legal assessment of their exposure to military justice. I think the British government should intervene and appoint an inquiry, the outcome of which I'm sure would be that the convictions should not be allowed to stand and would quash the convictions. We've got to bring it to a case. We can't have a loose end like this trailing. This is an appalling affront to any general notions of justice and an appalling injustice to the remaining living man. Well, I can put myself in the shoes of the then colonial government and the British assessment of it, that this was just simply some relic of the Boer War, colonial issues involving an alleged miscarriage of justice, but this was the great system of British justice which was on trial. Not these three men. It was the system that was on trial, and was the system which broke down. So my assessment of it would be very similar to what Geoffrey Robertson's had to say. I find myself on many issues lined up with Geoffrey Robertson, not just in this instance, but in other cases that he's taken up and run with. I'm appalled that it's gone on for as long as this. It's ought never to have been allowed to get out the gate, let alone be galloping over the paddocks of freedom. Jim, thanks to the efforts and the commitment of yourself and others who share your view, and I like to think who share my view, I'm sure that ultimately justice will prevail, but it's desperate to think that one has to go through this, to force through a relatively insignificant amendment, as it is in the big scheme of things, but of course a matter of life to these, well, to the remaining individual and reputational death to the other two men. British justice should be justice the same for everybody. Sir Douglas Menzies once said, justice is justice according to law. And this was an exercise of the administration of criminal justice, which sadly miscarried. Thank you, Jim, and that's, I think, a wonderful outcome. It's little enough for me to add my voice to the chorus, what will be an ongoing swelling chorus. The sooner that we launch this boil, the better. No judge with any ownership of the criminal justice system in his jurisdiction or her jurisdiction could tolerate something of this sort going unremedied. This is crying out for judicial intervention.